Some of the common sense things you can do are actually let the water flow through the river, recharge the ground table like it should be doing, and then pump the water out at the end of the river, right? Let it flow through town. Farmers can still get all the water they want. They can still grow all their crops. You're just creating a flowing river and getting the economic benefits.
You just heard Tim McNeely talking about the Kern River and how letting the water flow through the city doesn't cause a significant loss of water. Bring Back the Kern is a grassroots movement started by a group of Bakersfield natives with a deep appreciation for the Kern River. After being promised the return of the river was imminent numerous times, only to be disappointed, these residents decided it was time to mobilize to bring about a swifter resolution to the issue. In today's show, we discuss the concept of public trust and how pushing on corporate interests to do their part makes a significant contribution. Later in the show, we talk about how little it might actually cost to put the infrastructure in place to capture that water flow, but knowing that that water cost would actually be repaid in other economic benefits. Lastly, be sure to stay tuned to hear about Tim's personal passion project, which is a personal whiskey club.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome to the show today. My name is John Duffield. I'm a local CPA. Today, I'm fortunate to be joined by my guest, co-host, and moderator, Kyle Jones. I always enjoy when Kyle's in the office. He's better at this than I am. And
I mean, your esteemed co-host, right?
My esteemed co-host, Kyle Jones. Yeah,
pay you to say that.
I love it when you're here and you do this with me because you're so good at it and one of the best in my opinion. So yeah, and I'm excited about getting to spend time with Tim. Tim and I, have kind of exchanged emails and communication, but we've never met in person, and so I'm excited to get to know more about him. Before we get into today's episode, though, I'd like to encourage our followers to sign up for our newsletter. It is a great way to catch up on any of our episodes that you might have missed. Remember that our website is our2centspodcasts.com, and you can get a lot there, including other podcast episodes and things like that. So Tim, we're happy to have you joining us today. Thank you for being here.
Hey, I am thrilled to be here with you.
So we were talking about it before we got on the air a little bit, and I said, are you a Bakersfield guy? And you said...
I said, love brought me to Bakersfield 15 years ago, and that's what I'm going to name my memoirs.
Right. So love brought me to Bakersfield. Right. That's a great, I don't think I've been told that yet so far. So that one is
That's
good.
A new one. Yeah.
That's definitely a new one. I think there's, Kyle, for the record, I think there's been a couple of other guests that if I really knew the details, I think that's what brought them here too. But we weren't able to get that out of them.
Yeah. So, we didn't squeeze that juicy piece of info out.
Right. We didn't get that detail out of them. So I know you've got a day job. Tell us briefly about your day job, and then tell us about the nonprofit that you're a part of Bring Back the Kern.
I'm known for working with entrepreneurial dentists, helping them thrive in the midst of an uncertain world. So oftentimes they've got very complex financial lives. I help simplify it so they can get back to doing what they do and build an amazing life of significance, take care of the people they love, support the causes they care about, keep changing the world for the better. But what I'm really excited about is Bakersfield. And like I said, love brought me here 15 years ago. And since then, I have just fallen in love with this town, fallen in love with the people. And just for a moment, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine the Chicago without the Chicago River, or imagine Egypt without the Nile, or, London without the Thames, right? That's unimaginable. But you say, well, what about Bakersfield without the Kern? No one blinks an eye. No one even thinks that's wrong. And I'm hoping we can change that.
Yeah, I got to tell you that, I've lived here all my life, and one of my favorite things to do was to, I grew up in Arvin, went to Bakersfield College. And of course, when you were at Bakersfield College, sometimes you would run down the hill, you would go to Hart Park, or you would go down to the Kern River. And it was always fun to be able to see that. And then, of course, later in my life, I moved out to the Rosedale area. And it was always nice when there was water flowing in that river. And then you could see it from that perspective. The other day, I happened to drive down Trucks and Extension. It finally kind of really hit me in the face of how dry it is, right? It's just absolutely just nothing there. And
the whole lake's pretty much evaporated, right? I mean,
the lake is evaporated at this point. Yeah. So pretty frustrating from that perspective. So tell us, why is the Kern River dry at this point?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And, there's a common misconception out there that, well, the Kern River's dry because we're in drought. And that has a little bit to do with it, but actually the Kern River was just named one of the top 10 most endangered rivers in America. And the reason was not because of drought, like you might think. It's because of overuse. It's because people are taking too much water out of the Kern to grow crops and agriculture. With Bring Back the Kern, we're pushing for some common sense solutions to put water back in the river and actually, bring some real change to the community and the positive benefits that come with the flowing river.
Would the effects of the drought be de minimis on the Kern River, but for the, or agricultural use aside, or would we notice it a fairly significant
really
difference?
Wouldn't notice it all that much.
Okay.
We've got aerial photos of the Kern absolutely dry and the canals on either side of it flowing with plenty of water. And so there's lots of water out there. It's just getting diverted before it gets to flow through Bakersfield and before the citizens and you and I get to enjoy the river.
How are they able to divert it?
So they divert it through canals and through just old water rights that are still there.
Okay.
The water districts, they've been doing it for a long time and kind of maintaining the status quo.
You probably know the historical aspect of this better than I do. When was the river running through Bakersfield? As John said, when he was a kid out in the Rose area, you'd see the river flowing. What time frame are we looking at where this started to change?
Oh, that was, years ago. And, really it's been just more recently as, agriculture continues to grow. People use more and more water. They're growing the most profitable crops they can. And, because of that, once again, the river is just getting drained dry. And, I think that's a shame.
And I'm not a farmer by any means, John, but when you say profitable crops, I'm thinking almonds and pistachios, which take a tremendous amount of water, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Those are some of the exact crops we're talking about.
Okay. That's fascinating. John, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was kind of want to get a little historical perspective.
Yeah,
there.
no, I appreciate that, Kyle. And so really where we're at today, because we don't have enough, we're in that drought environment, right? So then the alternative is that we've got to kind of divert that or stop that diversion, which then means that some of those farmers are not going to be able to farm to the same degree that they have been historically.
That's what you would think, but there really are some common sense solutions so that you can continue to farm right. We don't want to stop farmers from getting water. Like agriculture matters. The jobs that are created matters.
Right.
And some of the common sense things you can do are actually let the water flow through the river, recharge the ground table like it should be doing, and then pump the water out at the end of the river, right? Let it flow through town. Farmers can still get all the water they want. They can still grow all their crops. You're just, creating a flowing river and getting the economic benefits of having a river
so
here
you're saying it's being diverted earlier in the process, right, or earlier in that pathway, and you're saying let it go, flow through the city of Bakersfield, and then finally use it or to divert it at the end. What's the motivation now, and why would somebody divert it at the point at which it's being diverted today?
Yeah, so I would tell you really the motivation is a couple-fold, and primarily it's illegal to do that and leave a river dry. And it's illegal under something called the public trust doctrine. And the public trust doctrine essentially states that the ultimate beneficial user of a river is the public. It's not farmers, it's not landowners, it's the public. And so we have been deprived of that river. Like I said, right? Imagine Chicago without the Chicago River. No one would ever think that that's even acceptable. But for some reason here, it's acceptable. So first and foremost, there's that illegal aspect of breaking the public trust. And then there's also
Tim, is that really a legal issue, right? So,
yeah.
So we have legal precedents for this. And,
absolutely. And
so then is somebody filing a lawsuit to change that process?
So we'll touch on some of those things here in a minute. The other piece of the legal aspect is the Fish and Game Code. And Fish and Game Code actually states that any operator of a dam has to maintain sufficient flows as to not endanger the fish. How well are the fish doing in the dry parts of the Kern? And once again, it's an enforcement issue, right? There's not always enough, people to get out there and actually enforce these things. And we're starting to see these wheels move, but they're moving really slowly. There's some, disputed water rights with Kern Delta. City of Bakersfield's getting involved in that, trying to get that water back in the river. Like the city of Bakersfield wants water in the river.
John, you've been around long enough. You know how long that process could be take if things get litigated to its fullest. It could be, our children before, or their children before they end up, seeing any type of headway movement on that. Is there anything being done to, I don't want to say, for lack of a better term, settle the disputes? Or anything to be done for everyone to come together and be like, okay, let's not litigate this issue. Let's all, come together. Let's all think from a common sense approach, and how are we going to best satisfy all of our needs?
Great question, Kyle. And that's exactly what Bring Back the Kern is pushing for. Is we're pushing for all the stakeholders coming together and finding a solution that works for us. Because the thing is, right, we are a unique community with unique needs. We can't have a solution forced on us. It's got to be all the stakeholders working together. And part of how we're doing that is we're actually doing a series of what we call river roundtables, where we're talking to stakeholders of other rivers with very similar situations to the Kern. For example, our first river roundtable's coming up, and we're doing the story of Poudre Creek. Poudre Creek's up north, about the same size of the Kern, same flows, and it ran dry. And huge outcry. Everyone said, no, we can't put the water back in. And it did go to litigation and finally got settled. You know, I've got the former mayor of Davis coming on. I've got the water district manager. I've got some of the other attorneys involved. And you ask them, you know, how did this thing actually turn out? And the water agency now says this actually turned out better than we could have ever expected. The area where the river is flowing is some of the most used area in the entire town now. People love it. And one of the surprises that came out is the water agency says now everyone's reaching out to us trying to figure out how do we do this? How do we actually solve this challenge for all the stakeholders? Because that's ideal, right? You don't want these things to go to litigation. You want to solve it far before that.
A win-win, hopefully.
Bingo.
What would what would it look like if the river was flowing in Kern? Maybe a silly question, but what throughout the city? I mean, what would that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I live downtown Westchester, and I love going out there. I ride my little electric scooter all along the bike path. And right now it is dry. It's deserted. You've got a lot of people living in the river. You've got a lot of trash in there. It's awful. Whereas all of a sudden, imagine a flowing river, right? You're going to have wildlife starting to come back. You're going to start having, you know, the green trees, the whole ecosystem being rebuilt and coming back. And not only that, you'll have recreation and job creation, right? How powerful is that? And it'll help Bakersfield attract and retain even better talent, right? We're a growing city. And you don't have to be too smart to realize, hey, a river should have water. There's no water in this river. Something's wrong here. If you want to bring talent up, if you want to help the community, there's no better way to do that than flowing rivers. There's a real economic benefit to flowing rivers.
Yeah, and maybe I asked that question wrong. I meant like literally what does it look like? Are we talking about like your ankles, or are we talking about actually a river that's 8 feet deep? I mean, what is it going to look like or potentially look like?
You know what? I can get those slow numbers, but yeah, you're talking 3, 4, 5 feet deep. You're talking pretty significant flows. You're talking enough to kayak in. You're talking enough to fly fish in. You're talking enough to go out there and, you know, hang out on your favorite holidays and mess around in the river again and really enjoy the beauty of the world-class scenic and wild Kern River.
It's funny, Cicely, my wife, mentions, you know, John, on or you too, Tim, on Stockdale, all the CPK and what else is it, PF Chang's and that whole development that was there. Yep. She always said, like, I wonder if we actually had the river flowing, if they would have, instead of facing Stockdale Highway, if all of it would have been facing the river, you know, and actually enjoying some of those views and, you know, having some restaurants and these, you know, commerce locations located right on the river.
Yeah, I think if, you know, like any other city, if you had the right river that you knew that you had water in it, we're going to have water in it all the time, right? There would be some level of motivation for those restaurants or, you know, those entertainment facilities to be located along the river just because of the feeling that it generates, right? It's a fantastic vibe, if you will. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there a private? Are there private parties involved in this that like the way that it is now and are controlling this to some degree, or is this all government?
I would tell you it's a lot of the private parties, it's a lot of the water agencies. They want to maintain the status quo. They've always done it this way. And it's really a failure to think about sustainability and how to keep things moving forward, right? And create win-win situations for everyone. And so it's really a lot of your big entrenched players that just don't want to think differently about how to solve this issue.
Do we have the ability today? Let's take the position. And by the way, Tim, I absolutely, you know, would agree with you from, you know, on the surface, I agree with you that we want water in the Kern River, right? I mean, it's hard for people to argue against that. So I do. There seems to be some reason, there's some motivation as to why there isn't, you know, we say drought. And so everybody's driving by the river now and they go, hey, there's no water in the river. That's because of the drought. Mm-hmm. You're telling us that's not necessarily the case, but that's what our initial perception would be is because it is a drought environment. Do we have the facilities in place today to be able to take advantage of that process if we were to do it differently? In other words, if we were to try to reclaim that water on the other end, you know, through the water bank or through reclamation facilities, Are those in place today, or does somebody have to spend money to put those tools in place to be able to do this differently?
Yeah, some of the infrastructure exists and some would have to be built. But, you're not talking about massive amounts of money. You're talking, tens of millions, not hundreds of millions. And, here in the Central Valley, we've already got some of the cheapest water anywhere. And so, if, cost of water increases a little bit per acre foot, it really isn't that big of a deal compared to the benefits that you're going to get and the job creation, the beauty, and just, the added value to our city.
Yeah, the aesthetics alone is
massive.
It's huge. Yeah.
What?
And you probably know this, who in the political realm in the city or county has an interest in this, or we need to talk to get them interested in this to help move things forward in what you would feel is the right direction?
You know what? I would tell you it's our local leaders, and it really has to be an outcry from the people here saying, this is unacceptable. You have to come up with some common sense solutions. And so, I don't even know that it's our political leaders really, as much as it is, you and I and the citizens of Bakersfield making our voices known.
And do you feel like you guys are getting traction now and making headway through this process, or do you feel like it's worse now than it's ever been?
I would tell you, I think things are more hopeful than ever before because people are waking up to this. They're realizing like a city without a river, that's just plain wrong. And, the citizens, we deserve better. And so people really are waking up. We've had great responses. We've done some fantastic artwork projects in the river. We've done a project called A River Remembered, where people submitted photos of when the river was running and them enjoying the river. We've done a couple art installation projects in the river. One's called Flow that you can look up. And, we've got some kayakers in the dry river, right? Because we want you to imagine the Kern River flowing again and realize it's actually possible. So I would tell you that the tide is turning.
I always find this to be a good exercise. If you would put on the hat of the other side, why not do this?
So I would come back to so I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. One of the challenges I always face is like, well, this is working. Why would I change this? Why do I want to change what I'm doing? It's working.
It ain't broke,
for me.
Don't fix it. That
ain't broke,
mentality.
don't fix it. But the beautiful thing is every time I've pushed through that, every time I've questioned and challenged my assumptions, I end up on the other end much, much stronger. And I believe that for Kern County and Bakersfield also. And once again, this is not about trying to kill jobs. This is not about, destroying ag. No one wants that, right? This is such a beneficial part of the community. But the thing is, we can have both. It's not an either or conversation. So
that you wouldn't label this as I know it's like a political hot button or topic, but like an environmentalist action. This is not something that's strictly saying that, we're anti-jobs, ag, big farming, all the things that you can imagine people saying. That this is not what this is about.
Correct. And I would tell you sitting here, if I believe that putting water back in the river was going to kill agriculture, that was going to destroy tens of thousands of jobs, I wouldn't be pushing for it because that's not a cost-benefit analysis that makes sense. But if you can do it in a way where maybe costs increased incrementally 1-2% a year, right? A minimal amount, but you receive all the economic benefit of the tourism and you can actually create additional jobs and everyone wins. Yeah, that to me makes a lot of sense.
Have you guys thought, and I don't know how this would look or if it even would make any sense, but some sort of ballot measure, something that you have gone that road to actually get the public to actually get their voices heard on that issue?
We've thought about those things, and I'm no political expert, but kind of the general consensus I hear from some of the other team members is even if you get a ballot measure on and everyone, votes that, hey, let's put water in the Kern, it really doesn't mean anything. And so it's a lot of effort for a little result. And so we're really focused on kind of the grassroots, communicating with the public, getting the story out there, and letting people know it's possible. It's not an either or conversation.
Yeah, the cost of that might be a deterrent, and I get it. It's more of a statement more than anything. But if you did have a resounding statement of 72% of Bakersfield saying this is what we want, and your goal is to get your voice heard, to me that is a loud voice or a loud statement. Yeah. But again, I don't know the cost of getting something on a ballot, what we need to lobby for it, campaign for it, whatever. That may be cost prohibitive.
We are a small organization made up of volunteers. We don't have the budget of these water agencies. We've seen the budgets they spend on attorneys.
Right.
We've seen the budget they spend on lobbying organizations in LA to try to say this can't be done. It's massive.
So we need some local businessman, someone with a deep pocket that's willing to write a check to help fund this measure. Yeah. I'm kind of joking, but someone like that in the community stepping up who is passionate about this to kind of bring it to the public's attention. I didn't know about this organization until I saw it roll across my Instagram feed. And I sent it over to Livy. I said, Livy, we got to get someone from this organization on the podcast. This is very intriguing. I mean, it talk about being relevant to the community, which is what we try to provide here on the podcast. And so I'm just glad you came out. I'm glad you guys are doing it. The more I read about it, the more I learn about it. I think it's something that if we can help, let us know, and any of our listeners can help, reach out to you, because I think this is something that a lot of people can get behind. That's more of a benefit to the community as a whole, not a divisive issue or right left, and just something that would be positive for our community.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're interested, follow us on Facebook, reach out to us. We'd love to have you out to one of the meetings and use whatever skills you've got to help us. We have people who show up and say, hey, I've got a drone and I'm really good at photography, and they capture some great footage. Other people are great at marketing. I mean, we really are grassroots.
That's great.
Yeah, Tim, I'm thankful to have you here today. I got to tell you, I wasn't aware of the organization until I knew that we were doing the podcast with you, but I'm thankful that you're carrying the torch for it and doing it. I got to tell you, I don't understand it well enough, right? And so there's part of me that thinks that if it were the right answer, that our city or county leaders would be doing that. And so there's some motivation as to why they're not doing it. But if there's another solution or resolution for this, then that'd be fantastic. I want water in the Kern River just like you do, and I think the rest of the community would. It'd be interesting to really understand this well and know how we get there. What are you guys doing as far? You said you had a small grassroots group. What are you guys doing to make it as known as you can?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes back to some of the projects we've done. So once again, A River Remembered, that was a great community engagement project where people submitted their photos and their memories of the Kern River and the time they had in it. The Flow Project had an artist come out. We did a massive installation made out of a lot of material that was found in the river and put some kayakers out there. And so, those community engagement projects are huge. We're working on engaging the press as much as possible and trying to take them on tours of where the water's diverted, taking them up to the bluffs and saying, like, look, here's where all the water's going. Let it flow and then take it out. Yeah, so it's those basic grassroots outreach. And then, our river roundtables are a huge part of it also, because once again, bringing the story in of other rivers, other cities that have gone before us, to me, that's massive. I don't want to be a pioneer because the pioneers are lying face down with arrows in their back. Like I want to follow the path of other people who have done this, and I want to learn from others. And so that's really the importance of the River Roundtable, is to learn from these other communities how they've reached the solutions that work for them, so we can find our custom solution for Bakersfield.
Have you reached out to anyone over at, say, like KGET and asked them to do like maybe a series on this or something that would kind of run for a month or two, whatever? Yeah,
we haven't done a series. That's a great idea. I know Bill Cooper from Kern River Parkway Foundation is doing an interview with one of the news stations today. And then Lois Henry does a fantastic job of covering all the water issues that are going on in the valley. And she's just started a series of videos on the law of the river that talk about, how did we get to where we are today? Like what shaped the forces? Because there's a lot of history and precedent that was actually set on the Kern River that affects water law across the entire United States.
Interesting. And Lois Henry is phenomenal, all the work she does. I just thought the idea of KGT, something that, for a lot of people, this is something that, hey, I would love to have water in the Kern River, but I don't have time to learn about it. I don't have time to understand it. I don't know really what's going on. So, and maybe aren't, using those channels where this information is. But, something like, KGT 17, which is a great local trusted community like partner, and they're, they stand for community involvement and nonprofits. And so, having something on there that people do tune into casually and and then over time as a series, and just really focus on people's attention and then getting that interest, and then I think that would be a great idea to help catapult the awareness of it at least forward.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's valuable, and I'm going to take that and run with it.
Oh, awesome. Glad I can give you my 2 cents. You get that pun, John?
Absolutely.
I see what you did there, Kyle. Pretty good.
That's why I said. That's why I like having him part of the show today.
You might have mentioned this a little bit, but I know we're kind of talking about some general things here. But one question I had on here I wanted to ask specifically is, when the water does flow through the Kern, how much does it, quote unquote, lose? Or does it lose any?
Great question. I've actually got my printout because I wanted to get those numbers right. And, it's really not that much is lost when it's flowing. And in fact, I'll I'll read what we have. But, years of taking the groundwater out of Kern County has really led to the falling groundwater table. That's why letting water flow through the river, recharging the ground table is so important. And, we're working on those things through something called SGMA, which is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And, when you actually look at how much the Kern River loses, it's a really small amount. 94% of the water can be recovered. That's massive. We've got the Kern Water Bank here. It's, one of the largest natural water banking, structures in the entire nation and probably the world, right? So we've got the ability to store. So we can get the water back pretty easy. And in terms of how much is actually lost, it's maybe about 100,000 acre feet a year. If it's flowing through, you may lose about 6,000 of it that's actually lost. So it's a relatively small amount.
So 6%.
Yeah, exactly.
So to kind of make it simple to understand. And so that 6% would I'm assuming you'd have to figure out, okay, well, what does that do to the cost of water for where it's being diverted from, and then put a number on it and see if people are willing to absorb that cost, right? Is that kind of the brass tacks of it?
Exactly. And it's something that can be overcome with the water bank is, when we get back to having, great years again, they're already talking about, mega storms hitting us now.
My daughter told me about that.
Right. So, who knows what the future holds, but right, if we get some wet years again, you bank that additional water. And these are all things that people way smarter than me can calculate.
Right.
And, you can calculate how much extra is required and put it in the water bank. And then in the dry years, pump it right back out.
Yeah, it's interesting sitting here today when we, all the news that we see about the drought that is going on and what the effect it has had on a lot of the other rivers or lakes. And then you go, but it's only 6%, but that can be remedied by, other things that we do. So is it just a matter of money? And so if it's a trade-off, then yeah, we're willing to spend that money because we believe that there's other economic benefits. And it's just, you've got to convince somebody that's willing to make that trade.
Yeah, it's really it's a numbers game, and so
it's the numbers piece, but it's also the legal aspect too, right? Coming back again to the public trust and the violation of Fish and Game Code. So there's legal issues at play too, and it'd be great if someone actually stood up and started doing some enforcement of these things.
Sure. What's the argument as to why they don't?
I think it's just they don't have the manpower to get these things done. We're short-staffed everywhere, right? We don't have enough police. We don't have enough, resources. And so people spend it on what makes the most noise and where they, can dive in and actually do something. And I think
maybe feels more important, right?
Or feels more important.
Not saying it is, but, like public safety, for example, or whatever the other, responsibilities of the government are. Maybe that's just not high on the totem pole, at least right now.
Exactly.
You mentioned something here, and I didn't think about this, but I think it's worth mentioning. And how does this impact disadvantaged communities?
Yeah, so, a lot of the city of Bakersfield is actually classified by California as disadvantaged. And, low-income residents. And, really the lack of a flowing river, for these people and creating, a habitat, creating recreation, they're losing those opportunities to rest, to recharge, and to, really recreate and be with their families and connect. And so that's what they're missing out on. And that's how they're being, kind of really even more disadvantaged by the lack of a flowing river.
Deprived of least of that public good, really.
Yeah, exactly. Which goes back to the public trust doctrine, and the ultimate beneficial use of a river is the public.
In a perfect world, when does your mission or your whole purpose of this nonprofit come to fruition?
3/22 on Wednesday, the 24th of August. That's the perfect time. The time is now. But realistically, it's, to get this done, I use a term called strategic stumbling. And that's what I do in my business a lot. That's what I believe works here is you do a whole bunch of things because you never know what's that one lever that's actually going to move this thing forward. Like what's the one thing? And you may have to do a whole bunch of little things for that one thing to finally hit. And so, it's a lot of trial and error. And, who knows how long this process could be, but the sooner the better. That's what we're fighting for. As soon as we can get it, we want it.
You need something to start the wheels moving. Something to just really kick the momentum going, and once the ball starts rolling, then it's going to happen when it happens.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of a catalyst.
Yeah, catalyst. That's a good word. I was kind of looking for that one.
Tim, what have we not asked you today?
I think you've done a great job of diving into the issues and talking about why it's important and the cost and the benefits, and does it really impact anyone? So I think you've done a great job.
Is there anything that you want to tell us that You haven't shared yet?
Oh, I would tell you, get involved, right? Bakersfield is a wonderful community. It took me a couple years after moving here to figure that out.
Sure.
But once I got my head on straight, I mean, it is a great community. And if you live here, if you work here, you are in a great place. And let's work together to keep making Bakersfield even better for the future so that we can leave this place a little bit better than we found us. My father-in-law says something that I absolutely love that I picked up from him. And he says, you never really get to own anything in life. And that's so true. You just get to use it for a little bit.
I agree with you. I think Bakersfield's a fantastic community. All the complaints that we ever get about it, are to some degree they're aesthetics, right? Some of it's, community activities and things that cultural events and things of that nature. So, if this looked different, if it was as beautiful as some of those other cities that we admire so much, if it had that appeal, then
and trees along a running river go a long way in dealing with pollution.
Sure.
Yeah. That's true, which is also one of the complaints of living in the valley. But we could be clean as you want, but the air is coming from all over, and it's settling right here in our wonderful valley.
Yep.
Yeah, but as Tim said, those trees more trees that are fed by water, right?
Yeah.
And so, that helps that process over the long run. Tim, thank you very much for coming in today. We have 3 rapid fire questions we always hit our guests with at the end, and so if we can hit some of those before we wrap up. Number 1, if you could turn back the time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell yourself today?
Aside from buy Apple?
Right.
No, I would tell myself to chill out and everything's going to be okay. I would say just chill out, relax, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, so you were uptight, tense kid then.
Way too much.
Right.
I focus too much on achieving instead of receiving.
Yeah, I think that's not unusual for 18-year-olds that, we're coming out of high school and we're trying to figure out what we're going to go do. And I think we're all pretty wound up trying to make our mark in the world. So I think that's pretty natural. So
real quick, I went and saw our podcast guest a couple of weeks ago, and Dr. Anna Marie Frank.
Yeah.
It's been maybe a month ago. I've slept since then. I can't take long. But one of the things I went and saw her and talked to her, and kind of echoing what you said, she said, you need to learn to accept more joy, which is kind of what you said about receiving instead of achieving. So give her a shout out for that.
For the record, she said the same thing to me. So
well, we're not too far different, John, you and I,
right,
to some extent.
Right, we got some of the same issues. So.
Yep.
Tim, if you could be remembered for one thing, just one thing, like once your father-in-law said, "Hey, we don't own this forever, right? We just get to use it for a while." So now you get to be remembered by one thing. What would that be?
I want to be remembered for doing well by doing good.
Can't go wrong there. All right, here's the fun one. I'm going to take this one because I like we get some good answers out of this one. What is something nobody knows about you?
Oh my gosh. Well, aside from having 2 beautiful standard poodles, one of which is an employee in my wife's office, is a certified therapy dog. We also love dressing up and playing steampunk, and so we'll get dressed up in Victorian garb and top hats and have a whole lot of fun doing that. So yeah, steampunk, and then running the Bakersfield Whiskey Society is another little side gig I have for fun. And so dressing up, having fun, playing with dogs and drinking whiskey, and then fighting over water.
Yeah. Do you hear him say that poodle's an employee? So I want to see that tax
return on that.
There's a line item that says therapy dog.
Right.
You'd be proud of us, John.
Right.
Favorite whiskey? I got to ask you now.
Oh man, that depends on the mood. But I'll tell you right now, the favorite whiskey is over at Imbibe, and it's a custom bottling of Maker's Mark that we put together for the Bakersfield Whiskey Society and Imbibe. And you get to go through a process of picking different staves that add flavor to the whiskey. So this ends up being, one out of about 10,000 different combinations. And you can run over to Imbibe and pick up a custom bottle of Bakersfield Whiskey Society Maker's Mark.
So that bottle is ready to go today? They have that?
We put it together probably about 6 months ago, and, picked the combination of staves, the flavor profile we were looking for, which is spicy, a little bit sweet, nice mellow, great finish on it, right? That good burnt bourbon finish. And they took it back, put the staves in, let the whiskey sit in the Maker's Mark warehouse for 6 months, and bottled it up. And Dave's got a whole bunch of it over at Imbibe right now for you.
That's fun.
I'll catch a bottle when I'm over there next
right.
time. I'm supposed to go in a couple of weeks for a social event. I have a dear friend who's drinks it by the truckload at Maker's Mark.
So there you go. Nice.
There you go.
Yeah,
Christmas is coming.
That's right. I'm going to buy him a bottle. So
remember when I did that little whiskey venture about 4 or 5 years ago here in town. Didn't go out too well. Did you ever hear of Bowen's whiskey?
Oh, Bowen's my neighbor.
Okay. What did you think of it?
I love Bowen's whiskey.
Yeah.
I really did. So it got good flavors. I always got, I don't know if you remember as a kid, they were like the little vanilla wafers.
Yeah.
I got a lot of the vanilla wafer flavors in it. So I love Bowen's stuff.
That was unfortunate the way that kind of, but I tell you what, I wasn't intimately involved as him and even Dave Plivich to a certain extent. Wade and Dave were really kind of taking the lead on it. But that business is so hard to crack. I mean, there's the competition, the money that's getting thrown around for shelf space and bartenders serving, getting kickbacks and stuff. We thought we had a good product and, a good way to get it to market, but,
so a good product isn't enough.
It's not enough. No, it's not. Of course, maybe we try to, again, now learning from the mistakes maybe might be different, but where we were at that time, it was very difficult.
Yeah, it's a tough business to be in. That's why I run a society and I drink the whiskey. I don't try to produce it.
Right. Did you? And so we're talking about whiskey. So last question. I promise I'm gonna let you go. But have you had the one that was bottled and manufactured for Metallica? It's called Blackened Whiskey. And
I have not. Tell me about this.
Marketing is so awesome on it. So they age the whiskey in barrels, but they play different songs during the aging process very loudly. Apparently, so I guess the vibrations of the music, different songs supposedly will lead to different taste profiles, and so I thought that, I don't know if it works, but from a marketing standpoint, that's awesome.
It actually wouldn't surprise me if it did work, and I'll tell you why. Jefferson, which is another American bourbon, did a whole series called Ocean Series.
Okay,
and the Ocean Series of whiskeys, like the first one was an experiment. They took a cask and they threw it on a boat. And they let the boat sail around and come back, and they ended up with a very aged, very tasty product because of all the agitation that was going on in the barrel while the thing was sailing around. And so Jefferson has their Ocean Series, so it wouldn't surprise me if playing some loud Metallica and guitar riffs.
Well, they did have a master distiller behind it, so this is not, I'm sure it wasn't intentionally gimmicky, but I found it to be quite
the
interesting.
right music can shake the rafters, buddy.
Well, if you listen to some of their songs, they'll shake more than the rafters.
Yeah,
that's some rockin' whiskey, huh?
It is. There you go.
Yep.
All right, I'm done. Sorry.
Yep, Tim. If somebody wanted to reach out and become, maybe help you and become affiliated with Bring Back the Kern, how do they reach you guys?
I would tell you the first and easiest step is just find us on Facebook. Follow us there. We put posts up, talking about issues affecting the Kern, affecting the river, and then secondarily, you can go to our website at bringbackthekern.org, and we've got a petition up, and I think we're approaching 10,000 signatures, where we're asking the California Water Resources Board to actually decide, on the issue of who gets the disputed water and give it to Bakersfield. We're asking California to make that decision, and those things are going on now. So you can sign our petition, follow us on Facebook, and then if you want to get further involved, send us a message. We'd love to talk to you.
Do you guys do any fundraising? Because I'm sure every nonprofit needs dollars. So
you know what, we've started tossing around the idea of doing some kind of a fundraiser. We're working on creating an annual event in the Dry River. Last year we did a march through the river. And so we're working on those things, right, just to raise awareness and have some fun in the river. And once again, just point out that contrast. And but no, we haven't actually done any fundraising yet.
Okay.
So it's mostly come from the Kern River Park Foundation.
Fundraising for litigation purposes.
Or, just to help market, to get the message out, to do a bunch of different things that money helps make happen.
Exactly.
Sure. Tim, thank you very much for coming in today. We appreciate you.
John, Kyle, hey, thank you.
Thank you.
I enjoyed having your 2 cents on the issue.
There you go. Full circle.
The show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burton with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen Real Estate Lender, broker and investor, Dave Plivlich, President and CEO of the Marcom Group and MarcomBranding.com, and Amanda DiGiacomo, President of Atlas Financial Solutions. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or catch us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcasts. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share with others.